Hope everybody's able to find a place. If there's seats, that's all right. If there's seats near you, just let's help each other out, find a place to be. We got a few minutes, hear some of the amazing music and start to be, part of one another. But I just want to make sure that everyone that comes in here is able to find a place to be. And so if we could all kind of cooperate with that, with the machzors and the seats, just kind of like make sure you look around and see who's looking around for a spot. Looks like we're almost about there. So a little bit of music to set the tone, and it's really, really wonderful to be here. It feels good to be with all of you. Good Yontif, everybody. I am so glad we're all here together. I have to express my gratitude to staff and the volunteers who ushered us all in so well and nicely, and here we are. So it is good, as it says, Tov, to be together. Welcome to all of you who are gathered in our Sukkot Shalom, and all who are joining us from near and far. I'm also sending blessings to all the college students and young adults who grew up at CRC and are making their way in the world, wherever they are, watching us and joining us on the stream. We love you very much. Amid these days of awe was yesterday's autumn equinox. Though the Jewish calendar is based on the moon, Jewish tradition does not overlook the solar seasons. The Talmud calls yesterday's observance Tikufat Tishrei, the month that turns us to autumn. The change from one season to another is a turning point. And so again, as so often happens, nature is our teacher, as we ourselves hope to turn and change, starting on this holy day. Tonight, the start of a very distinct, wearying, but hopefully meaning-filled Yom Kippur, we each stand before a spiritual mirror to see ourselves as we are with as much honesty as we can muster. We come with no gifts, no bribes, no illusions, and no excuses. Our defense is receding moment by moment. Let us be bold enough to see within and honest enough to view what we discover with clarity. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of blessed memory taught this: prayer is meaningless unless it is subversive, unless it seeks to overthrow and ruin callousness, hatred, opportunities, and falsehoods. May our Yom Kippur prayers be subversive in that way. Our tradition teaches that on this day, all God asks of us is to make a turn, even a small turn, so we can begin to return to our best selves, the beings filled with light and love that we were meant to be. On this day, God says to us, my hands reach out to you who make teshuvah. I turn away no one who gives me their heart. If you come toward me, I will walk toward you. Thus does our day of atonement become a day of at-one-ment. Let's fill our hearts and souls with our melody, our nigun. tradition and our custom to begin these holy times, these holy days, of course, in the evening after sunset with the lighting of lights. And so it's truly an honor, a delight, really, on this Yom Kippur to invite Vicki Lander and Torah Oglander and Tali Light and Levi to come forward so they can bring light to all of us on this holy day. It's because of Vicki that we have these amazing flowers, fresh each holy day from the flower farm, which is like one of the best kinds of farms I can imagine, a flower farm. And Levi, look at you. And Levi, who had his bar mitzvah here a number of years ago, and your brother, and then one more to go, right? And Torah I've known really almost forever, and was married right on this spot. So a lot of history, and of course, with this family, we always think about Jack Oglander, a blessed memory, your husband and father and grandfather, leader in our community, and just one of the best souls that anyone could ever know. I think everyone who met Jack felt his goodness and his wisdom and his love shine through. So in addition to the candles for the holy day, it's traditional to light yahrzeit candles in preparation for Yom Kippur, always a time of yizkor, of remembrance. So we will light 7 of those yizkor candles, 6 for the 6 million Jews and 1 for all the others who perished in the Holocaust of hatred and madness. 7 is also our number that stands for infinite, so our candles can represent all loss. Our candles are thus lit for parents, grandparents, spouses, children, relatives, and friends that we have loved and lost. And I look out at this congregation and I know who you've lost, and some of you very recently. And so I know that these candles are filled with meaning for you and for all of us. But we also light these candles for quiet heroes, martyrs, soldiers, peace activists, victims of cancer, AIDS, Alzheimer's, COVID-19, and of other diseases with no known cure, and all victims of violence and war. We light these lights to remind us that their dreams and visions for a better world are now ours to bring into reality. We light for them, we light for all of us, we light for the universe. May the memories of our loved ones be a blessing. So I will ask this family to light all of those candles, so we'll be able to sing the blessings. There's matches and lighters and all kinds of ways to bring light to this place. Torah just told me he's wearing one of Jack's ties. Every important mitzvah takes a little bit of time. And now, the brachot. Bring in that light, spread it around, and then bring some of it right into your own heart and soul.
Eloheinu melech שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Amen. Shehachianu, of course, says, "Blessed is the Holy One, whose presence fills creation, who gave us our lives and who kept us alive and who brought us, all of us, to Lazman Hazeh, to this sacred moment." And we say together, Amen. On page 97, we begin the hard work that Yom Kippur requires of us to look within, to figure out where we can do better. And so it says, Averot shebein Adam lemakom Yom HaKippurim mechaper. Averot shebein Adam lechavaro ein Yom HaKippurim mechaper. Ad sheyiratzeh et chavero. Together. For transgressions against God, the Day of Atonement, but for transgressions of one human being against another, the Day of Atonement does not atone until they have made peace with one another. B'shiva shel mala u'b'shiva shel mata, al da'at hamakom va'al da'at hakahal. Anu matirin lehitpalel im ha'avar yanim. Together, in the sight of the Holy One and before this congregation, no matter how far some of us may have transgressed by departing from our highest selves, we pray as one on this night of repentance. On the following page, may God fill the spaces between us as we pray as one. From this Day of Atonement to the next, may we reach it in peace. All Israel makes these vows to turn from sin and wrongdoing and to walk in the way of your law, the path of justice and right. Yet we know our weakness, how prone we are to fail. Help us to keep these vows made with humility. We have come to seek pardon and forgiveness. Rabbi Susan.
Kol Nidre. This prayer that we have gathered to hear pleads that we may be released from the vows and all the promises that we make from this Yom Kippur to the next if we cannot keep them. 2 years ago at this Kol Nidre service, I said that this would be my last time to lead High Holy Day services. Not that I was retiring, not that I was done serving CRC, just that after 40 years of doing these services, I was taking a break. And this year, I'm here in a different way, as we are all different 2 years later. Different, because nothing stays the same. And as life teaches us her harsh lessons of loss and disappointment and despair, we learn, I have learned, to have hope without being attached to where it leads or doesn't lead. Taught by time, humbled by life's hurdles, we show up for this Kol Nidre service ready to hear our beloved Chava Polinsky play the familiar haunting melody, and Alan, wouldn't be Yom Kippur without you chanting the words. This prayer that somehow knows that as flawed as and imperfect human beings, we have broken our promises to do better. And we will again break our promises, miss opportunities to do good and to be better, and we will need to ask for forgiveness from others and from ourselves again and again. So we show up for this night knowing that life demands that we be open to change. CRC, for example, is about to enter our 40th year. The Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, and for all that time, the Torah tells us, our shoes were never worn, our garments never frayed. We were given manna and quail to eat, and the well of Miriam opened up miraculously to nourish us physically and spiritually. But after that first 40 years, when we entered the land, everything changed. We had to work hard to grow our food, to cobble our shoes and mend and make our clothing. We had to take responsibility for ourselves and our children and remember that we are inheritors. We are not just inheritors, we are ancestors, and that our work here is to plan and protect for the future. So as we are entering our next 40 years, we are paying attention to this lesson. We are working with strategic planners to prepare and to plan to make sure that the next 40 years build on our core values and plant within us and within our community seeds for a future that we can be proud of and support financially and spiritually. Change is never easy, but it's necessary if we are to continue to be a force for good, if we are to continue to be a part of the solution to the suffering we see around us and not be part of the problem. Rosh Hashanah gave us a formula for change. To change even the destiny before us, tzedakah, tefillah, teshuvah, these three things, acts of loving kindness and charity, real prayer, and this act of teshuvah, this possibility of turning a little bit to make transformation, to change. They do, it says, temper judgment's severe decree. On Rosh Hashanah, we learn that there can be magic to our prayers, formulas that are meant to inspire radical acts of kindness and justice, the kind of justice that builds into our institutions equity and mercy, building in the way the world is supposed to work. We are taught that with justice and mercy integrated together and brought into balance, we can draw into the world something new that will change the world for good. And on Yom Kippur, we are pushed to go deep within for the changes that we know we have to make, for the change we seek as we grow older, as we change ourselves. This night pushes us to turn inward and be honest about what we see, to be courageous enough, brave enough to see where we can atone, where we can grow and change and do and be better this year. And it starts with this Kol Nidre prayer that calls us to look at all of our broken vows. Musicians like these, what a blessing we have this year to have musicians like these. Musicians like these, musicians like Chava. They practice hours every day. It takes practice to get really good at most things, to make music that transcends and carries us with them to the realm of beauty that lifts us and truly transforms and changes us. So we too must practice. These prayers demand practice and intention if they are going to guide us to transcendence, to change. And even when we're tired and skeptical and afraid, here we are. We go forward because we believe that change is not only possible, but it's built into the fabric of creation, of our very beings. And I know you, and I know us, and I know that our shared core values will make sure that the good in us will win, because they are planted deep inside like a womb. These values that we share will continue to defy despair, and with our forgiving and our listening and our learning and our loving, we will dare to vow and to promise that we can grow and change and figure out how to do better and be better to make sure there is a promising future. Maybe what this Kol Nidre prayer is really trying to tell us that in spite of this imperfect and broken and disappointing world full of structures and institutions that promote the unfair and the unjust, forgiveness and atonement and healing and hope are built in. And as long as we are willing to keep practicing, to use these lessons that we learned in the wilderness, to do the hard work required of us now, of growing and mending and tending with radical kindness and compassion and generosity and fierce justice. We can be the source of hope needed to bring the change that will be an overflowing blessing, not just for some, but for all in this new year. So let this melody root us in this transformative spiritual practice and carry us to an infinite inwardness and an infinite outwardness that opens us up to our connectedness with each other and our connectedness to the planet. Chava, we're going to invite you to come and play. We will listen with our hearts open, ready to break open and vow that we will do better this year. After Chava plays, are you going to play from there? You're going to play from over here. Oh, yeah, come on up. Then Natalie and Matt Schatzman and their children West and Mira and Paul Wagman and Elsie Cordona, they will come up. We'll stand. They're going to hold our Torahs before the open ark, and we will stand vulnerable and ready for whatever it takes to open the doors of the possibility of a better year. So please, take a breath, get comfortable, and listen as our beautiful Chava gives us the gift of the melody of this Kol Nidre prayer. Please rise.
Natalie? Paul?
Kol Nidre v'yasare v'acharame v'koname v'chinuye v'kinosei u'shvut dinedarna urishtabana diacharimena v'di asarna al-nafshatana מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא עלינו לטובה כולהון יכרתנה בהון כולהון יהון שרן שוויקין שוויתין בטלין מבוטלין לשרירין ולקיימין נדרנב לנדרה ויסרנה להסרה ושבועתנה ושבועות
Please read together. The bottom of page 98. It's a custom to do any prayer that's going to be transformative 3 times. Chava's playing, Alan's singing, and now our reciting of this prayer will hopefully open the heart of the world to possibilities we haven't even yet imagined. Let all our vows and oaths, all the promises we make, and the obligations we incur to you, O God, between this Yom Kippur and the next, be null and void, should we, after honest effort, find ourselves unable to fulfill them. Then may we be absolved of them. Knowingly or not, the whole community of Israel and all who live among us have sinned. Let us be forgiven. As in your love you have been patient with this people from the time you led us out of Egypt to the present day, so in your great love may you forgive your people now. And Adonai said, I have pardoned in response to your plea. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehachianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed is the Holy One, whose presence fills creation, for giving us life, for sustaining our lives, and for bringing us to this moment.
Remain standing. With all of that beauty and reverence and holiness in the air, we call forth a moment of earth, tree, rock, soil, mountain, sand, and fields. We call forth moments of water, ocean, streams, rain, waterfalls, swimming holes. Calling forth moments of air, wind, and song, and breath, and breeze. Call forth a moment of fire, candle, sun, campfire, lightning. We call forth values like compassion and joy and peace and love to yourself and to all beings, north, south, east, west, above, and below. Let these elemental images and these godly qualities ground us as we call each other to prayer with the words of the Baruch Hu on page 100. Some congregations, it's traditional to say the line after the Shema, Baruch Shem Kavod, out loud. In other congregations, it is customary to say them silently as a whisper or a breath. On Yom Kippur, however, every Jewish community, or at least the preponderance of them, never say all, right? I get it. But we do, the custom is to say that second line, not from the Torah, but that follows the Shema, with our full and resonant voices. So we're on page 103. I invite everyone to take another nishima amukah, a collective deep breath, breathing in everything that is good and high and holy about these moments we are sharing together. And let's together, with the Shemantra still ringing in our ears from Rosh Hashanah, let's together sing the words of Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu. Kivod malchuto leolam vaed. You may be seated. Continuing with the words that do follow the Shema in the Torah. Ve'ahavta, you shall love, on page 104. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha vishinantam levanecha vidibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlektecha vaderek uvshokbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leod al yadecha vehayu letotafo bein einecha uchtavtam al mizuzot beitecha uvihisharecha Leman tizkeru v'yasitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. MS. Page 106. This is our song of freedom, our song of liberation, our obligation to do everything we can through our words and our deeds and our hearts and our souls and our feet and our arms to make sure that everybody can be free and sing songs of freedom as we did in our story at the shore of the sea with hope out in front of us, and hope is still there. We sing Michamocha.
Michamocha bailim Adonai Michamocha nedar b'kodesh norati lo totefel malechutecha ravanecha bo ki hayam lifnei Moshe Zeili, 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 Anu v'yameru Adonai Yimloch, Adonai Yimloch, Adonai Yimloch le'olam. Adonai Yimloch, Adonai Yimloch, Adonai Yimloch le'olam. Adonai Yimloch. King Jacob and saved him from arms stronger than his own. So may we be all oppressed and persecuted.
They had a full band. You know, I think they would have gotten right to the promised land. And maybe that's how we begin our freedom movement, you know, just with that kind of a feeling. So I'm giving tonight's sermon in a bit of an unusual place. In the middle of the evening redemption prayers between Michamocha and Hashkivenu. Rest assured, however, though the word sermon is written on page 120, there will not be another one. Wow, that's my first rim shot ever at CRC. That's amazing. Right on Yom Kippur. I don't know which one of us has to... My mom, Zoe's Nana, Gabe's Nana, of blessed memory, had a magic trick. She would make people cry. And laugh, but mostly cry. Not by causing anyone physical pain, God forbid, or by informing people of sad, grievous news. No, my mom elicited the good kind of tears, the crying that takes you by surprise, brought on by something tender and powerful we have seen, heard, felt, or experienced. The type of crying that makes you feel more alive while it's happening and cathartically better when it's over. In the Torah, this type of crying is referred to as nichmar rachamim, translated as the heating up of emotions. We would be at a restaurant. I'd look up from the menu, and my mom is listening or talking sympathetically to the server, nodding her head with great sincerity, something that as a psychologist she had great practice doing. The head nodding is accompanied by her placing an empathic touch on this person's arm. And sure as anything, that server is weeping freely. This kind of scene was repeated often with hotel clerks, fellow customers at the shoe store, and strangers at the airport gate. And Amy reminded me, even her hospice nurse and her oncologist, she was able to step out of her own situation to listen to their troubles and make them cry. There was something about the tone of her voice, the disarming questions she would ask, and her obvious and easy compassion. As my mom joined us at CRC for either Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur services every year for 20 seasons, I have a feeling she made some of you cry out there as well. She didn't make me cry like that all that much, probably because I resisted it, given the complexities of parent-child dynamics. I did, however, still get addicted to the tears of heated up emotions. The earliest I can remember this feeling was my first summer at overnight camp when I was 10 years old. It hit me all at once on the very last night. The woods, lake, campers, counselors, and songs that had become my home for 8 weeks, and I cried myself to sleep. I was a little embarrassed and somewhat confused, but my tears felt life-affirming and special. I spent 20 more full summers as a camper and staff member, and though I enjoyed everything leading up to it, my deep, dark secret was that I always looked forward most of all to the ending, just so I could feel those tears again. Through them, I knew with certainty that something utterly significant had just happened. As the years went on, I also took a kind of an affirming pleasure every time I noticed other campers and counselors crying at summer's end. Eventually, I became one of the people who helped draw out those tears. Right, Torah? Ritually singing Leaving on a Jet Plane. I know that Stacy is watching with us on stream, so she loves John Denver. but I would sing it to the entire camp community the night before everyone departed. Now, I know this song is a bit of a sentimental, cheap trick, but it's really effective. Imagine the social impact of 300 boys and men crying it out together. Changes the world. Years later, as a dad, I was privileged to be simply a fly on the wall at the camp's last night ceremony. There, another guitar-wielding counselor sang Jet Plane, and I watched my son Gabe and his camp buddies huddled together, all in tears. From generation to generation, I thought, while I sobbed, of course. Though my camp career is long over, I can still be fairly easily brought to sweet tears, often over having something to do with my own kids. I admit that here at CRC, crying on the job is not an irregular occurrence. Sometimes I'm up here on this bima during an especially sweet moment at a bar or bat mitzvah, and I see Zoe or Gabe whispering to Amy, and I know they are saying to her, teasing me, "Look, Dad is crying again." In fact, the Torah stories that speak most powerfully to me are those that depict this sensation of getting choked up and releasing redemptive tears. They serve as ancient proof that I am simply part of a long line of saps. The warring brothers Jacob and Esau encounter one another after years apart, and to their surprise, the reunion turns into reconciliation, and they sob out their relief and forgiveness. They fall onto one another's necks, a Torah idiom, I think, for a bear hug. Similar scenes take place a generation later in the long saga of Joseph and his brothers. The commentators count Joseph being overtaken by emotional tears 7 times, a Jewishly significant number, during the jagged journey he traveled with his siblings from jealousy and cruelty to forgiveness and weepy embrace. Very much to my surprise, a few years ago, these very stories played out in my own life as my estranged younger brother and I made peace with one another. We hugged it out and cried while we stayed up all night getting to know and like one another again. This touching reunion took place, as it turned out, 1 week before my brother Stephen sadly passed away from colon cancer. Crying can play an integral part on Yom Kippur as well. On this day of days, we purposely weaken our physicality to strengthen our spirituality. We aim to break down our defenses and egos and strip away layer after layer of rationalization, hoping to reach a wellspring of vulnerability and honesty. We symbolically circumcise our hearts to become softer and more open, heating up our emotions sometimes powerfully enough to bring forth those meaning-filled tears. Crying on this day can come from hearing the singular melodies, such as Kol Nidre. We may be moved to weep from our memories, sweet and bitter, that are provoked by the familiarity of these gatherings. We can cry from the recognition of how far we need to travel to get from where we are spiritually and ethically to where we know we ought to be. We tear up as we confess our misdeeds, take responsibility for our part in the sins of the world, and resolve to do and be better. Our sobs are due to all the brokenness and cruelty in the world, but also from the sheer beauty and blessings all around us. By the end of this long Yom, this day that seems to stretch on forever, I often drop hopeful and cleansing tears due to the promise that beginnings like a new year can elicit. When we sing that final "May it be a good year," I can truly believe that change and renewal are possible. Perhaps better times can be ahead for us, for those we love, and for everyone, everywhere. Into this charged atmosphere comes a passage from the Talmud that describes yet another holy day gate, the gate of tears. Our tradition holds that this gate is kept open because when someone prays with eyes of tears, those prayers always reach their destination. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel posited divine pathos, the idea that our emotions are moving to an immanent God who actually has feelings, so that when Yom Kippur makes us cry, the very heart of the world grows more sensitive, more vulnerable, and more open to transformation. Our tears, the Zohar teaches, break through the doors of heaven. I personally do not draw distinctions between holy religious experiences and powerful secular ones. I am regularly moved to spiritual tears, for example, through contemporary artistic expressions, especially those that portray the changes that occur in individuals, families, and societies through the sweep of time. Novels such as Jonathan Letham's Fortress of Solitude and Alice Walker's Color Purple, movies like Boyhood and Broadway shows including Rent and Spring Awakening. But it is music that stirs my emotions like little else, especially performed live and when the artist or band is attempting to do more than entertain, and their desire to connect to and uplift their audiences creates transcendence. For me, there is no artist in any medium whose work touches me as deeply, makes me breathe more easily, move more freely, and turns on my emotional waterworks than Bruce Springsteen. It is some mystic combination of his song structure, tone of his voice, lyrical subject matter, longevity, energy, joy, poignancy, activism, and storytelling. Most of all, I think it's his passionate desire that his performance be liberating, redemptive, and transformative, and he almost always hits that mark. I cried the first time I saw Springsteen in 1980 as a teenager, tears of awe and revelatory joy. 40 years later, there's that 40 again, that experience was bookended for me in a way as I watched him live on my television with, I think, many of you, singing eerily alone because of the COVID lockdown in the nighttime cold of the Lincoln Memorial. It was the virtual celebration of President Biden's inauguration, and the fact that the event was taking place in the menacing shadow of the January 6th attempted insurrection meant that this time my Springsteen cry session produced tears of relief and gratitude. More than anything else, those two events, 40 years apart, helped turn my fantasy of taking some of my rabbinic sabbatical time to follow a bit of a Bruce Springsteen tour into reality. I knew I needed to chase more of those purifying tears. They are such good medicine for my soul, and therefore for my work and for my personal life as well. So I spent a week last February on an epic road trip, attending to the opening 4 concerts on Bruce Springsteen's first tour since the return of performances, and the entire adventure was truly everything I had hoped for and more. And then my mom got her diagnosis, and I dropped everything to drive straight north to be at her first oncology appointment. Somewhere at the end of that drive, tired and filled with concern, I was listening to a recording of a recent Springsteen concert. Bruce was introducing a song called Independence Day by telling a story about one of his legendary adolescent fights with his father. I flashed back to that first time I saw him in concert, when I was much younger, suddenly remembering that the same song was also introduced back then with a narration of that iconic Springsteen father-son blow-up. In 1980, Springsteen's voice was defiant, rebellious, finger-pointing, mocking, and he was all born to run away from his dad. What I heard on the road to Chicago, however, suspended from place and time, was a very different version of that memory. This time, Springsteen, who turned 74 yesterday, spoke from a wide-angle perspective with great empathy for his father, who he now knew was battling depression at the time of that fight. Springsteen had come to terms with the fact that he shared responsibility for the deterioration of his relationship with his father. All of this was shared with the subtext that the storyteller himself was by now a dad as well. This juxtaposition brought on more than weeping. I bawled to the point that I had to pull my car over to the side of the road. It was pouring rain, of course, you can make your own metaphors. What emerged from this intense episode was a tear-stained revelation. I reflected on the passage of time, the ways in which I still very much resembled my youthful self, and the ways in which that boy and I are nearly unrecognizable to each other now. How for all this time in between the 16-year-old me at the Uptown Theater in Chicago and me as a 60-year-old rabbi following the tour, there had been this artist I have never really met, but is someone who is able to articulate, reflect, frame, grieve, celebrate, and grow on this journey for and with me. A line from one of Springsteen's songs had been nagging at me on and off while I traveled, driving all night chasing some mirage. It was too close for comfort for me not to wonder, is that what I'm doing, chasing mirages? However, following my clarifying roadside meltdown, I knew what had transpired on my unorthodox rabbinic mini sabbatical was real. It was a Yom Kippur Katan, an actual Jewish term for a smaller atonement at one moment that may not happen on this high holy day, but one filled with grace, teshuvah, and renewal nonetheless. After the tears dried, it was as if I had new eyes, just in time to be radically present for my mom and for my family. I am certainly no Bruce Springsteen, and I'll never be able to fully replicate my mom's amazing magic trick. But once in a while, I too can help people release those healing tears. It happens these days mostly when I sing this next prayer. And I am humbled when I look out into this beautiful, wonderful congregation and see emotions heating up, knowing that this mashup version of Hashkivenu and I are simply a pipeline, transmitting spirit to whoever is receptive in the moment. Just a few months ago, we had a religious studies major here observing a Friday night service. He was observing it, he wasn't observing it. There's a difference. Though he had never been in a Jewish space before, he decided spontaneously to stand up to recite Kaddish. Through his weeping, this young man told us he was remembering his brother, who had passed a few years back, and hearing U2's "Take This Soul and Let It Sing" verse used in prayer enabled him to feel his brother's presence. I certainly have special memories of singing Hashkivenu on these high holidays and spotting Michael Steinbaum of blessed memory, his eyes moist and hope-filled, and watching the Polinsky family huddle together having a cleansing cry. I know they're not alone. Actually, I haven't really teared up much since my mom's Shiva, so let's hope her spirit is here right now, helping coax it out for all of us. It's Yom Kippur. The gate of tears is wide open. Let's go through together. What page is it? 107. Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ain't a boy, mister, I'm a man, and I believe in the promised land. I believe in the faith you gave me. I believe in the love that can save me. Big wheels roll through fields where sunlight streams. Meet me in the land of hope and dreams. Have a little faith, there's magic in the night. It ain't no sin to be glad you're alive. Have a little faith, there's magic in the night. It ain't no sin to be glad you're alive. Tonight we're gonna ride to the sea, wash away these sins from our hands. I ain't a boy, mister, I'm a man. I believe in the promised land. Everything's gonna be alright. Come on, everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be Sukkot shlomecha, ufros aleinu. Sukkot shlomecha, and cover over us tonight with a Sukkot shalom, a shelter of peace for you, for those you love. A shelter of peace tonight for all creation, for everyone and everything that dwells on earth. Through those redemptive tears, let this night be filled with peace. Thank you, Mom.
We turn to the bottom of page 108. Thousands of years ago, as the liturgy was becoming something formal, our rabbis added this line in before the Amidah, before the only part of our service that is called tefillah is called prayer. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. It makes sense when you look at it. Open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. But as you dig at it, as you poke at it, it becomes clear just how subversive these words are. Taken originally from the Psalms, from a moment when David has lost his child. These aren't words of affirmation, they are words of grief. And they are words of spite. David, in the midst of it all, looks up and says, Adonai, if you want my prayer, you're going to have to do it yourself. And so wherever we find ourselves this day, wherever we find ourselves this Kol Nidre, this year, whether we are ready to say, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise, or whether we're going to say, if you want my prayer, you're going to have to do it yourself. We take a moment to center ourselves, to get ready for the work. Page 108. Please rise.
The words of our vote Ve'imahot call us to think about the past and look into the future. I'd like to invite up Mira Schatzman, one of the many young people who had her bat mitzvah last year. Last year? Yeah. It's only been a year? Wow, 2 years, right?
It was like
3 years. It was May. It was this past, oh my gosh, wow. Whew. So it hasn't been so long since you've been up here. Well, welcome back, and we are honored that you were going to lead us in the Vote Ve'imahot on page 109. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Ha'adon Ha'gibor Ha'anora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Komei HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevei Gula Livnei B'neihem, L'man Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham V'Yitzchak Sarah.
be seated. There is a long, wonderful tradition of folks who have worked at CRC and have gone on to become rabbis. From our own Rabbi Dale, who is my first Shabbat school director, to Rabbi Randy, to Rabbi Ed, who we think of every High Holy Days and every Shabbat here. And so it's a special honor to welcome up Becky Nelson-Zuhl, the next in this long and wonderful line of folks who have given so much of themselves to this community. And oh my God, does Becky give so much of herself to this community. And we are so grateful for you and grateful for your words of Torah as you come up to our bima.
Not a rabbi yet. Working on it. So we are a work in progress. I'm here to tell you a story. This happened very long ago in a place very far away, but you won't be surprised to know that there were Jews there. The drought had lasted for a very long time. The grasses were dry, the earth was hard, the streams were empty, and the crops were dying. Nobody knew why the drought had lasted for so long. The community came to the rabbi and they asked, "Rabbi, you must help us. This drought is endless. What can we do?" And the rabbi replied, "We must all pray. Each one of us must pray. Go back home and pray with all your souls." So each person went to their own home and they prayed for hours. The next day, there still wasn't a cloud in the sky. They went back to the rabbi and they demanded something more powerful. The rabbi thought and considered and said, "Everyone must fast for a whole day and pray for the whole day." So each person went home to their own homes and they fasted and they prayed. And the sun beat down on them even more, with more heat than before. And so finally, they came back to the rabbi and they said, "We're dying. We need water. What must we do?" And the rabbi went into his study and unrolled ancient scrolls and searched in his books. And finally, the rabbi emerged saying, "For the most powerful prayer, we must gather as a community, one people in one place, fasting and praying together." And so that evening, the word went out, and soon the synagogue was full and overflowing. But just to be certain that the entire community was there, the shamash, the helper, the guardian of the synagogue, started to count the people and check them off. And he whispered to the rabbi, "We're missing someone." The rabbi raised his voice and said, "Who's not here? Who are we missing? We need everyone to be here." And people looked at each other. And finally, someone called out, "I know, it's Chava, the widow. She lives outside town. We haven't seen her for a while." Oh, of course, the rabbi thought. He was filled with remorse. He should have invited her. The widow Chava. Her husband had been tolerated by the community. He was a merchant, and his prices always seemed to be highest when the people needed the goods the most. But he always had what was needed. And the community had treated Chava very well throughout her first week of mourning after his untimely death. But then everyone forgot how long ago had it been. So the rabbi immediately sent the shamash to fetch her, and the congregation waited. Every moment where they were in agony. As they waited, they needed her to be there. And finally, the doors to the synagogue opened, and in walked Chava, carrying a jar. Her clothes were simple and worn, but clean. She walked up slowly to the bima, and then she turned to the community and stared at everyone there. Many people lowered their eyes when she looked at them. And finally she spoke, her words spilling pain. You want me here. You want me now. You want me to help you after you've abandoned me for years. You want me to help you when you abandoned me when I was left alone? And now you want me to help you get rain? I've not felt your tears, only my own. And then she held up the jar, showing it to everyone. This is my jar of tears. These are the tears I cried on my own. I collected them as my only true possessions, and they are all I have. Since your God will not bring you rain, maybe I should smash this jar on the floor, and that will be the only water you get. And in that moment, thunder was heard, and suddenly rain fell in a great torrent. The people got up and cheered and danced and went outside and danced in the rain. Such relief. And amidst their rejoicing, their singing and dancing, no one saw Chava leave. They danced all night. But in the morning, when the last of the dancing crowd had left the synagogue, they saw a pomegranate tree that had not been there the day before. Only the shamash knew that it was growing in the place where Chava had stopped and poured her tears out onto the ground. And there in that spot grew a pomegranate tree whose seeds resemble tears, more tears than the year has days, as many tears as the Torah has commandments.
We end our section of Tefillah with a prayer for peace with Besefer Chaim. I'm going to share some words written by Amanda Gorman. Aperture, the hole in the eye through which light travels. The word peace shares history with pact. That is to say, harmony is a tomorrow we agree on. We're more conditioned to contagion than combat, but a virus, just like war, separates us from our fellow people. Yet if we are willing, the cut can be an aperture, the hole through which we reach for the whole of one another. A virus is fought inside us, while violence is fought among us. In both, our triumph is not in conquering others, but conquering the most destructive agents and instincts that we carry within our mortal forms. Hate is a virus. A virus demands a body. What we mean is, hate only survives when hosted in humans. If we are to give it anything, let it be our sorrow and never our skin. To love just may be the fight of our lives. This year, we pray for more blessings, more peace, and more love, with the words of the Sefer Hayim.
בספר חיים, בספר חיים, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. בספר חיים, בספר חיים, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. נזכר ונכתב לפניך, לפניך. נזכר ונכתב לפניך, לפניך. ספר חיים, ספר חיים, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל, לחיים טובים ולשלום. ידה דה ידה דה ידה דה ידה דה ספר חיים, ספר חיים, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה.
Take a moment for the quiet prayers of our hearts.
Io li vi
So we arrive at Vidui, our time for confession. And this year, even before I raise my fist, my chest is aching, a bruise already seeping up from the deep, the paralyzed, the silent witness in me. Not enough, not enough, not enough. The shame of it slapping me red, my unstirred resting feet. How slow they are, how unwilling. Not enough, not enough, not enough. The gates are closing, and I am still miles of unwalked righteousness. The gates are closing, and I am not forgiven. The gates are closing, and I have not forgiven. The gates are closing, and I have not yet cracked open. Vidui is the time to crack ourselves open and really examine what's inside. We are on page 115.
Read together. We sin against you when we sin against ourselves. For our failures of truth, O God, we ask for forgiveness.
For pretending to emotions we do not feel. For using the sins of others to excuse our own. For denying our responsibility for our own misfortunes. For refusing to admit our share in the troubles of others. For condemning in our children the faults we tolerate in ourselves. For passing judgment without knowledge of the facts. For remembering the price of things but forgetting their value. For teaching our children everything but the meaning of life. For loving our egos better than truth.
Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu.
Our God and God of our mothers and fathers,
Avo lefanecha tefilatenu.
grant that our prayers may reach you.
Ve'al titala midchinatenu.
Do not be deaf to our pleas.
She'enanu azefani mukseore.
For we are not so arrogant and stiff-necked as to say before you,
Ma lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu.
as to say before you, Adonai, our God and God of all ages.
Tzadikim anachnu v'lo chatanu.
We are perfect and have not sinned.
Aval anachnu chatanu.
Rather do we confess,
Chatanu.
we have gone astray.
Avinu.
We have sinned.
Ashanu.
We have transgressed.
Page 116 together. There is a custom, if you'd like to join us, that you give yourself a little tap over your heart as we say each of these. There's another custom that we give ourselves a rub instead over our hearts. So whether we're feeling like we need a little more of a, I don't know what you'd call this, or whether feeling like we need a little bit of comfort or somewhere in the middle, I invite you, if you find this ritual meaningful. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha ba'ones uvratzon. For the sin we have committed against you under duress or by choice. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'zadon uvishgaga. The sin we have committed against you consciously or unconsciously. V'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'galui uvasater. For the sin we have committed against you openly or secretly. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'har hor halev. The sin we have committed against you in our thoughts. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'dibur peh. The sin we have committed against you with our words. V'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'chozek yad. And the sin we have committed against you by the abuse of power. V'al kulam Elohai slichot, salach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu. For all of these, O God of mercy, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'imutz halev. For the sin we have committed against you by hardening our hearts. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'chilul Hashem. The sin we have committed against you by profaning your name. V'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'zilzul horim umorid. For the sin we have committed against you by disrespect for parents and teachers. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bilshon hara, for the sin we have committed against you by speaking slander. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'masa u'matan, the sin we have committed against you by dishonesty in our work. V'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'hona'at re'ah, for the sin we have committed against you by hurting others in any way. The bottom of page 117.
I had many good cries with your mother over these holy days, Randy. Thanks for reminding us. In 1981, as my class was about to be ordained, we had a controversy that almost stopped our ordination as rabbis. The few women in our class wanted to add the names of the mothers, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, and Rachel, to the Avot prayer. No one had done that yet. Change the English, they said, but don't touch our Hebrew. Today, most people have forgotten that the prayer was not always written with the Avot and Imahot, the fathers and the mothers. But when we first began to do these high holy day services almost 40 years ago, the words Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, seemed like another nod to the patriarchal systems we were working so hard to change. But how can you have the high holy days without Avinu Malkeinu? Hard to imagine. The prayer was a magical formula that grew from making rain in a drought. And then with each need, another prayer pleading for the many needs we still had then and still have today, made the prayer longer and longer and longer. To redeem Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, I wrote in the gentle mother pieces that I hoped would bring some balance. Our Father, our King, hear our voice. Gentle mother, are you listening? Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to sickness and war and famine. Gentle mother, teach us that we must heal and feed and make peace. The language helped a little bit, but it didn't feel right until 1989. In 1989, I was standing here. I was ready to skip the prayer. I was tired. I had 3 small children, and I was the only rabbi in those days doing all these services and all the sermons. Oh, God. Life is change, right? Our Adina of blessed memory was still nursing, mostly for comfort, from the many surgeries and procedures that she was having. Believe me, I had no use for an Avinu Malkeinu. I was ready to explain that until the patriarchy let go of its chokehold, I was not going to feed God the Father anymore. I was ready to invite the congregation to join me in my protest. And then I looked over, and there before me, ready to sing, was very pregnant Leslie. Leslie was getting ready to sing these words, words that in that moment were redeemed by the promise of a new life, words that were softened by the miraculous growing of the womb, words that I have come to love in this sacred space of the and, rejecting the certainty of either or. Words that blurred the binary lines that were keeping me stuck. Words that opened up to so many more possibilities. Words that dare us to have the chutzpah, in spite of what we know, to plead for our prayers, our longings, and our desires to be heard. Please rise.
I always use the same piece of music because at some point my daughter came and scratched out Our Father, our King, and wrote in, Our Mommy, our Queen.
We move into our closing blessings on page 121 with the words of Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach li'adon ha'mo, latet gedula li'oseh bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, ve'lo samanu kemishpechot ha'adamah. Shalom.
be seated. We'll start maybe what will be a new tradition for Yom Kippur, one of the holy days that has Yizkor attached to it. So I'd like to ask our dear friends, Margie Hartman and Nancy Weigley, to join us on the bima. Margie's dad, of blessed memory, Maurice Guller, and Nancy's mother, Gloria Sirkin, passed away on the same day, December 11th, a few hours apart last year. And Margie and Nancy have been sitting together, bar bat mitzvah, no bar bat mitzvah, Shabbat mornings saying Kaddish for their respective parents, both of whom I was blessed to know very well. So it's an honor to invite them up as we sing, may the memory of good people bless our days, thinking about Gloria and about Maurice and about all of our loved ones who truly are memories who bless our days. To watch Andy and Brad and Kobe and Noah watch the two of you speaks volumes. And so we come to the Kaddish now. All of the people you're remembering, all of the names, part of the Shmei Rabbah, the great name of all the people who have graced this planet. So I'd like to ask those of you who are in your year of mourning, walking that path for a loved one, to please stand so we can recognize you. Our heart goes out to you. And please join if you are, if this time, this tender Yom Kippur time is the Yartzeit, the anniversary of the death of a loved one. We also want to recognize you and put our eyes on you and send our love and our blessings. And now I'd like to ask us all to stand together so that we can be shoulder to shoulder with our mourners, but also because we are a community. Maybe never again will we be this configuration of the congregation, but these hours we've spent together have connected us. And we also all know what it's like to lose a loved one. I'm going to read some names. This Yom Kippur is the Yartzeit of Charles Henry McCurry, Angela McCurry's father, of William Boniface, George Boniface's father. Coming up is the Yartzeit of Theodora Lazarus, Alice Block's mother, and Dina Bornstein, Mindy Berkowitz's mother, and Mindy just lost her brother, Alex Bornstein. He used to take Dina to Friday night services every Friday night. Jack Shapiro, Papa Jack, of blessed memory, his yahrzeit is Wednesday. We're remembering recent losses, including Emil Nathan, who was Robin Ehrlich's father, and Sam Bernstein, Lee's father and Lisi's father-in-law. Rabbi Jim and I had a chance to interview Sam about all the good works he did. I'll never forget that day, and we're so sorry for your loss. Remembering as well Roger Goldman, of course, of blessed memory. Tovia Siegel, Sarah's mother, and my mom, Linda Randall. Matthew Blickenstaff, and Sue Smith, Carl's wife. Carl's here often on Friday nights to say Kaddish for Sue. Dr. Moisey Shopper. Stephanie Buchler, Toby's sister. Lila Rosenblum. Leah Larson. Paul Michel, Andrea's husband. Jay Summer. Lois Loomstein, I know Steve is here, and Teresa, for your mom. Kathy Lass, Ann Epstein, and Maurice Guller and Gloria Sirkin. David Adelstein, Harriet's husband and Cheryl's father, nearing the yahrzeit of Stuart Milner, Andy's father and Lori's father, Jessica's father-in-law, grandpa. So many names, so many memories, so much love. And so all together in this Yom Kippur community that has already shared so much, and there is more to come, on page 124, let us open our hearts, our tears, and our condolences as we remember them with Kaddish Yatom. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute, B'chai echon v'yom echon, Uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala uv'izman kari v'emru Amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam omei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh, V'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'emru Amen. Yehe shlam rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'emru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromah hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel ve'imru. Amen. Zikronam levracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing. Amen. Please be seated. Just want to make sure everyone knows the rest of the day. This is Yom Kippur. It is supposed to be a one long continuous day if we can be with that flow. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock is our morning service, followed by our breakout sessions, which will start pretty quickly after the service ends across the street at our mothership, the First Unitarian Church. There's a wonderful schedule, 6 amazing sessions. There's a schedule, I think, on a poster board outside and also a flyer. Right after services, we have a special guest and a wonderful panel. The guest is Heather Fleming of Missouri Equity Education Partnership. And then also movement, if you're ready to move a little bit, and movement is prayer when done right, especially with Sarah Ann. And then Rabbi Daniel and Rabbi Karen will take the middle hour with their respective breakout sessions. And then finally, with Kaddish and preceding Yizkor, Jamie Sentnor, who's been leading this wonderful grief support group, just out of the goodness of her heart, and she's a professional and a friend. We'll invite anybody to come for a session on grief and grief support. And Rabbi Dale with a wonderful text study that I know will edify us on a day we're meant to be elevated. So that's happening in the afternoon, and then all of that, we also have a children's service at 3:30. Come and check it out. Rabbi Karen does such a great job putting together just a joyful but also meaningful children's service. So whatever kids you know, bring them out here at 3:30. I got a sneak picture. Rabbi Karen and her family have built a car that's going to be part of the service. So if you're intrigued, you might want to come. And then finally, at 4:30, Rabbi Susan will lead the Yizkor service. All the names. It feels so difficult and challenging to not be able to say every name that everyone wants to hear in a space like this. But on Yizkor we do. We hear all the names, and I know people will bring slips of paper with names all through Yom Kippur, and we'll make sure we honor everyone and remember each and every one of them. That starts at 4:30, and that flows right into Nila, the concluding service, with one more blast of the shofar, and hopefully to send us out renewed and ready for New Year. But there's still work to be done. We're going to thank everyone at the end, but I'm just really grateful for our staff and the volunteers and our musicians and our streamers and our security team. Really, really thank you, and all of you for being here. It feels like really and truly we just fit. It's another sort of CRC sign. We all just fit. Whoever came had a place, and that's how we always wanted it to be. So as tonight and tomorrow's Yom Kippur services are supposed to feel like one piece, instead of our usual blessing, we will simply hear our nigun that began the service. We ask that you leave as quietly as possible at your own pace, making only eye contact to bless one another and to say good night, focusing on your reflections and soul work. So I say to all of you on behalf of wonderful Rabbi Daniel and Rabbi Karen, Rabbi Susan, Rabbi Jim, and everybody here whose hearts are so open, say Gemar Tov. And it should be a meaningful fast to those of you who are fasting. And may God bless you and keep you, for we are all loved by an unending love.